At the heart of Los Angeles, beneath the gleam of Forrester mansions and the perpetual glamour of fashion empires, a quiet storm was brewing, not in the showrooms or the romantic entanglements, but in the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors of University Hospital. Dr. John Finn Finnegan and Dr. Bridget Forrester, both respected professionals and bound by family as much as medicine, found themselves drawn into a medical mystery so dense, so laced with consequences, it threatened to shatter reputations, unravel lives, and challenge the very boundaries of their ethics. It started with a routine review. Finn had reopened the case file regarding Liam Spencer's so-called miracle recovery, the now celebrated surgical removal of a supposedly inoperable brain tumor. On paper, it was a triumph. A once hopeless case had turned into a story of medical brilliance and second chances. Grace Buckingham's name was attached to the file, and Bridget had given it an initial stamp of professional legitimacy. But something gnawed at Finn. A detail. A timing inconsistency. The kind of thing only someone who knew medicine inside and out would catch. And once the seed of doubt was planted, it didn't take long to grow into something impossible to ignore. Working late into the night, Finn and Bridget combed through Liam's surgical records and every available scan. The first anomaly surfaced in the anesthesia log. The duration listed for the procedure didn't match the usual sedation window for a craniotomy of that complexity. Not even close. Then came the issue of the surgical incisions, or more accurately, the lack thereof. The scar Liam bore was barely visible, far too faint for the deep-level cranial access required to remove a tumor. Next came the imaging files, a pre-surgery scan showing a sizable mass, but one that, on closer inspection, had irregular edges that didn't align with any documented tumor pattern. The post-op scan was even stranger. It was pristine. Too pristine. No swelling. No trace of recent trauma. It was as if the scan belonged to an entirely different patient. By the time Finn pulled up the operating room footage, archived by the hospital's internal systems, the unease had evolved into full-blown suspicion. The video, supposedly documenting Liam's life-saving surgery, had been spliced. At first glance, it looked legitimate. But small cues betrayed it. Timestamp shifts, audio glitches, discontinuities in the positioning of surgical instruments. Someone had tampered with it. And now the question was, why? That question deepened dramatically when Liam, still recovering from what the world believed was a brush with death, received a surprise visitor. Sheila Carter. Unannounced, hobbling slightly, her foot clearly still healing from the infamous shooting incident and unmistakably missing one of her toes. Her presence alone was jarring enough, but what she said raised even more red flags. In a calm, eerily self-satisfied tone, she hinted at Liam's survival being no accident. That some people in this world don't deserve to die, and some do. She never directly claimed credit. But she didn't deny it either. And when she smiled and walked away, the chill she left behind lingered long after she was gone. Finn's mind spiraled. Could Sheila, his mother, have had a hand in saving Liam? Was this her attempt at redemption, or something darker? He wanted to believe she was trying to change. That her actions at the beach house, saving lives instead of taking them, meant something. But if she had intervened in Liam's case, if she had manipulated hospital personnel, falsified data, or threatened someone into forging a medical miracle, then the cost wasn't just ethical. It was criminal. Bridget, sensing Finn's turmoil, urged caution. But her own hands were tied. Eric Forrester, who had grown increasingly uneasy about the growing tension around Liam's recovery, began pressing her for reassurance. With the Forrester family preparing for a high-profile trip to Italy. One that would include top press, potential investors, and social media influencers, any scandal brewing in their orbit was a risk. He made it clear, he wanted stability, not chaos. He trusted Bridget to manage the situation quietly. But Bridget knew better than to look away. Her medical integrity wouldn't allow it. Especially not after what they'd uncovered. Finn and Bridget expanded their inquiry, bringing in a trusted radiologist to analyze Liam's scans without context. The verdict was damning. "This is not a surgical recovery scan," the radiologist said. "There's no evidence of intervention. If I saw this, I'd assume the patient never had surgery at all." And yet Liam believed he had. He'd experienced the nausea, the memory lapses, the emotional roller coaster of facing his own mortality. He felt saved. But what if it was all a performance? What if someone, possibly Grace, possibly someone higher, orchestrated the entire scenario, manipulating Liam's fear and his symptoms, then handing him a false diagnosis just to produce a miraculous outcome? But for what? Sympathy? Leverage? Publicity? Or was Liam merely a pawn in a bigger plan, one designed to shield someone else, perhaps Sheila, from legal scrutiny? If Sheila had played some role in this twisted puzzle, it wouldn't be the first time she leveraged chaos to climb out of disgrace. Finn's internal struggle grew unbearable. His code as a physician demanded action, transparency, accountability. But his heart, the part tethered to a mother who, however twisted, had risked everything to save him in the past, hesitated. He knew that dragging Sheila's name into this without certainty could cause irreparable damage. But protecting her meant violating every oath he had ever taken. Bridget warned him, "If we say nothing, we're complicit. We're allowing this lie to live." And that lie could hurt Liam all over again. Finn agreed. They began discreetly tracing the original data. The surgical consent form had discrepancies in the signature, Liam's name, but written in handwriting that didn't match known samples. The surgeon listed on the form, a colleague of Grace, had mysteriously taken an abrupt sabbatical days after the procedure. When contacted, his responses were vague, defensive, uncomfortable. All signs pointed to one conclusion. The surgery was either faked or had been performed without proper protocol, and the records were manipulated to cover it up. And whether it was Grace, Sheila, or someone else pulling the strings, the hospital was now entangled in a conspiracy that threatened to implode. As the truth neared the surface, Finn was pulled in all directions. Steffi, sensing something was off, questioned his late nights and evasiveness. He kept her at a distance, not ready to implicate Sheila without proof. Liam, growing more confident in his new lease on life, began publicly praising the medical team, unknowingly reinforcing the lie. Eric doubled down, pushing Bridget to contain the narrative before Italy. And Sheila, always one step ahead, began inserting herself into conversations, casually dropping hints that she knows what it means to survive when the odds are stacked. But the dam was cracking. Finn and Bridget had enough to file a formal internal report. If they did, the hospital board would be forced to open an investigation, and the fallout would be immediate: scandal, press, lawsuits, and shattered public trust. Yet the alternative, burying the truth, meant becoming part of the deception. Finn looked at the final scan comparison, side by side. Pre-op, post-op. The supposed miracle. And he whispered, "We've been lied to." Bridget nodded. "And now we have to decide, who are we if we don't expose it?" The medical inquiry was no longer just clinical. It had become a moral war. A test of who they were, not just as doctors, but as people. As protectors of truth. And across town, Liam Spencer, oblivious to the unraveling beneath his feet, stood in front of a camera crew, giving a televised interview about overcoming the odds. He talked about trusting the system, about gratitude, about life's second chances. And watching from a dark corner of Il Giardino, Sheila Carter lit a cigarette with a half smile on her lips and whispered to no one, "Second chances, only if you know how to take them." The truth was coming. And when it did, it wouldn't just put Liam back under the spotlight, it would expose a conspiracy that reached through the hospital, through the Forresters, and possibly back into Sheila's bloody legacy. This was no longer just about medicine. It was war. As the days passed, the pressure mounted like a vice tightening around Finn and Bridget's every move. They couldn't walk the hospital halls without wondering who knew, who suspected, who was watching. The internal report was nearly ready, backed by enough data inconsistencies, witness silences, and irregular documentation to demand a formal hearing. But something deeper was creeping in now. Not just fear. Not just moral obligation. Danger. Finn found himself avoiding eye contact with Liam. The guilt had started to rot him from the inside. Every time Liam praised the team that saved his life, Finn heard it like a knife carving into the truth. The words were hollow. Worse, they were manufactured. And yet Liam was living in blissful ignorance, grateful to be alive, making plans for the future. He even joked with Steffi about going skydiving, just because I can now. But that future was balanced on a lie so fragile that one whisper could send it all crashing down. Bridget became increasingly anxious when she discovered someone had accessed the hospital server using her credentials after hours. She knew she hadn't logged in. The implication was clear. Someone was trying to cover their tracks. They were being watched, maybe even followed. And then came the unmarked envelope left in her office mailbox. Inside were stills from the operating room footage, screenshots showing the surgical field, instruments, and team. At first glance, nothing alarming. But on closer inspection, the clock in the background was off by exactly 42 minutes compared to the timestamp on the footage Finn had reviewed. Someone had tried to fix the time discrepancies, but failed. Meanwhile, across town, Sheila Carter was watching everything unfold from the shadows. She didn't need to make a move. She just needed to wait. And watch. Because if the lie was exposed, she could easily redirect the chaos, let the hospital take the fall. Let Grace or the mysteriously absent surgeon shoulder the blame. But if it wasn't exposed, then she remained, as always, a step ahead, a survivor cloaked in innocence. A woman with a heroic side, as Steffi had once reluctantly admitted. But her silence wouldn't last. Not when she learned that Bridget and Finn had consulted a third-party ethics board anonymously at first. And not when she found out that Eric Forrester had sent a private investigator to check into Grace Buckingham's activities during the week of Liam's procedure. That was a line too close to comfort. So Sheila made a decision. She needed leverage. She paid a visit to Grace. The conversation was quiet, controlled, full of implied threats. "I helped you clean this up," Sheila said, voice like ice. "I helped you survive a storm you started. But if you drag me down with you, Grace, I promise I'll take everyone with me. Bridget, Finn, even Liam." Grace, panicked, pleaded for time. Sheila gave her 48 hours. Meanwhile, Finn was falling apart. Steffi noticed. His sleep was erratic. He avoided eye contact. He barely touched his food. Finally, one night, she cornered him. "You're hiding something," she said. "And if it involves my family, I need to know. You owe me that." And Finn broke. He didn't give all the details. But he told her enough. The surgery, the scans, the doubt. The possibility that Liam never had a tumor. That he might have been manipulated, emotionally and physically, into believing he was dying, only to be, miraculously, healed in what could be one of the most dangerous lies in recent memory. "If this is true," Steffi whispered, "Liam's whole identity since the surgery is built on a fantasy. That could destroy him. And it might destroy them." Meanwhile, Bridget finalized the report. But before she could submit it, the hospital received a legal notice from an anonymous source, threatening a defamation lawsuit if any formal accusation against the surgical team or Grace was made public. Attached were confidential personnel files, surveillance photos of Finn and Bridget meeting off campus, and a printed line at the bottom, "Think carefully before you ruin careers and lives over a theory." This wasn't just pressure. It was blackmail. And then came the real blow. Liam collapsed. Not dramatically. Not with drama. Just a dizzy spell. A sharp pain. He brushed it off, but Finn ran the scans again, this time without anyone knowing. And what he found made his blood run cold. The pre-op scan they had been working with, the one supposedly showing Liam's tumor, was identical in structure and size to the current scan. No changes. No removal. The tumor, or what was being passed off as one, had never left. But Liam wasn't showing symptoms anymore. He wasn't deteriorating. Which begged the most terrifying question of all: was there ever a tumor at all? Or was it a planted image, created to mimic a condition that never existed? The only way to confirm it was to confront Liam. But how do you tell a man that his entire survival story might be a lie? Before Finn could decide, Bridget called. The ethics board was moving. They had questions. The story had leaked. And then the final piece arrived. A facial recognition match confirming that the supposed surgeon in the edited or video was a technician from a different department, someone with no surgical credentials, who hadn't worked in the operating room in over 2 years. The video was staged. It was over. The lie was real. And now the only question was, who orchestrated it and why? Sheila? Grace? Someone else trying to manipulate Liam's legacy? The answers were coming. But so was the fallout. And for Liam Spencer, the man who believed he'd escaped death, the real pain might only be beginning.